Hey, it's Bill Simmons letting you know that we are covering The White Lotus on the Prestige TV podcast and the Ringer TV YouTube channel every Sunday night this season with Mallory Rubin and Joanna Robinson.
Also on Wednesdays, Rob Mahoney and I will be sort of diving deep into theories and listener questions. So you can watch that on the Ringer YouTube channel and also on the Spotify app.
Subscribe to the Prestige podcast feed. Subscribe to the Ringer TV YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can also watch these podcasts on Spotify. White Lotus, let's go.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio to reset the tone, it's Jason Mantzoukas!
Let's go!
Oh, hell yeah, fuck yeah.
Come on, boys.
Guess what? We're talking about Shoresy again. Yes, Jason is here to help me talk about Shoresy Season 4, which dropped this week on Hulu. We are also going to talk about the second season of Rogue Heroes, which has concluded its run on MGM+.
Incredible. I cried during both shows. Every show we're going to talk about, I have cried during.
And then we're going to talk about 1,000 Blows on Hulu, at least the first episode, another Stephen Knight production that is just blowing my mind. I love it so much. At the end of this episode, or the second half of this episode, I have another guest. Richard
What the
Price.
fuck? Get this fucking guy out of here.
Author of Clockers,
crime writer
Freedomland.
extraordinaire,
Yeah,
the Wire
the
writer,
screenwriter behind A Color of Money, and the screenwriter behind The Night of, and
Lush Life.
Lush
The
Life,
book
my
Lush
favorite
Life?
novel, maybe one of my favorite novels. Richard Price is here to talk to me about his latest novel,
Dickie
Lazarus
Price?
Man.
DP.
Lazarus Man, which came out in November, and you should check out. It's about an ensemble of characters dealing with a building collapse in Harlem in 2008. It's an amazing novel. You should definitely read it. And I was just honored to have Richard Price on. He'll be on the second half. I guess I have to deal with you now.
I'm furious that you've double booked. I'm assuming this is going to cut into my time.
This is a big thing.
I have a lot of other shows I want to talk about.
We always do this with Bill, where there was a run where he would have an incredibly famous person, but then front load the show with like
Some
3
turkey.
basketball writers. So he's like, coming up next on the pod, I got Rob Mahoney talking about whether or not the Hornets are going to make the lottery. And then former Secretary of State Jens Baker. You know, like,
Oh, no, that is absolutely true. I mean, to have Richard Price, like, I kind of want to just leave. I kind of want to just fast forward to that interview.
You're not allowed to go.
Fuck. I almost did. Last time we talked about Shoresy,
Yeah.
they sent me a shirt.
Did they really?
sent me a hockey jersey, and I forgot to bring it.
I didn't
I
get a
meant to
shirt.
bring a hockey. I also talked about it a bunch of other places.
Okay, so maybe I haven't
it
hit
was
my quota.
cumulative.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get it. Hey, Shoresy. Hey, guys. Hey, hey, Team Shoresy. Get it together and send CR some swag.
I asked for Kiso. I'm asking for jerseys. I'll wear the shit on camera. I don't care.
I've been trying to talk to Jared Kiso for literally
What's up with him?
years.
Is he Daniel
Years.
Day-Lewising us or
He
what?
is just in his own world up there. And I've talked to other people inside of like that community, the Canadian film and TV community, and they are like, he has figured it out in such a way that he's just like, no, I'm doing my
He's
thing.
just summer in Sud Vegas.
Oh my God. I mean, let's all go to Sudbury. Let's get
into this because season 4 is actually the beginning of part 2 for Shoresy. Now, Jason and I talked about the previous season 3, which culminated with the Sudbury Bulldogs winning this national championship.
I'm sorry, the Sudbury Blueberry Bulldogs.
Sudbury Blueberry Bulldogs,
if you don't
my
mind.
bad. Winning this national championship of senior whale shit hockey. One of the great sports stories ever told on screen, if you ask me. Heart-rendering, but also hilarious. And then, they were like, this is the end of part 1 of Shoresy. Stay tuned for part 2. With all that, like the anxiety and headaches and, can we do this? Can we do that? I don't know of any other show that's just so graceful. Like, yep, we're a new show. We're a different show now.
Not only that, but this show, after executing at such a high level of exactly what you said, like one of the best sports stories put to film, one of these an incredible underdog story that is just relentlessly hilarious. For them to just exhibit and then follow through on true curiosity for the emotional well-being of these hockey thugs, these senior, this is recreational hockey for middle-aged men.
Yes.
To be clear, that's what we're talking about. Yes, they coach a younger group. Yes, there are younger people, but this isn't like a pro team or something. Like, this is like a hobby team that is taken so seriously, but that they are really investigating and interrogating, specifically with Shoresy, who, if you've been following since Letterkenny, has gone from an unrepentant absolute villain to maybe like a character that has the most heart and has shown the most growth and the most interesting
he's
arc.
in Field of Dreams or some shit now. Like,
I mean, as Mal and Joe would say, we love a character on an arc. And Shoresy is unequivocally on one of the most interesting arcs on television.
Yeah, so the first 3 seasons are obviously about the kind of Bad News Bears development of this ragtag group of veteran hockey players who come together and, with the help of some ringers and some gyms, win the national championship.
Don't promote the network. Please don't promote the network.
No, the ringers like...
No, don't promote the network like that. More like, say it like this. Yes, they've got some grant lands, but, they've got...
Yeah. And then part 2, season 4, is Life After Hockey. And it is essentially summed up. And Jason and I look, like, you should take this as 2 thumbs up, Siskel and Ebert.
Oh.
If you haven't watched Shoresy season 4, just put a pin in it. I don't want to see our retention rate fall off. We're going to talk about some other shows. Jump ahead to whatever part of this pod you want.
Or listen to us joyfully discuss
J.O.
this show.
about this
You're
show.
not gonna, and then come back and listen to it again after you've watched it. This is a show that I've watched multiple times, all of the seasons. It's hilarious. I cry constantly during this show because it's catching me by surprise, And not for nothing, it's still dead funny. That they're executing on something like Weird Sudbury.
Yes.
That they're doing Kangaroo Court. That they're doing all of these things that would be at home in earlier seasons of the show or on Letterkenny episodes where a bit is enough for a whole episode. Like the episode of Letterkenny that is just about the adult spelling bee.
Yeah.
Or the one where the entire town tries to describe and figure out what's the best potato chip. It's a real episode of TV. The whole episode is just chips reviews.
I was just watching, I got served something on Instagram the other day that was, who plays Toby on The Office? Paul Lieberstein?
Yeah.
And he was talking about the difference between writing television and film and what kind of maybe networks were getting wrong about comedy now and how sitcoms are about characters. And it just really does not matter what happens on sitcoms. If people like the characters, you can give them the least amount of plot going on.
Yes, the mistake we've made is thinking that story matters for shows that are funny.
Yeah.
And story doesn't matter. It is characters. It is these people and watching them recalibrate, piece by piece. What's funny about watching a show like 30 Rock isn't just, oh, this is so funny, this is clever writing, blah, blah, blah. But each season, watching them decide, oh, wait a minute, let's pair Jack and Kenneth up in this. And like if you build good characters, then you can just mix them around into different duos and trios, and it's dynamite.
Yeah. And what this show does that I think I kind of put my finger on as I was watching the last episode, which I did not intend to burn through season 4 in about 12 hours, but I did.
I did as well.
Is it does this accordion thing where this entire season is essentially about Shoresy and Goody and Hitch and Michaels and Dolo mentoring these young, like pretty high-level prospects who are about to go off to national clubs in different parts of Canada. And it's their like summer before, essentially their graduation summer or whatever.
So whereas the previous seasons have been about the hockey season,
this is about
the games, the playoffs, the urgency of a championship, this season is off season.
Yes.
This is summer break. This is the boys are doing too much partying.
They're tubing.
They're tubing too much.
And tubing's incredible.
But you're right. Like the introduction of these younger players and them having to figure out what it means to have an emotional kind of an emotional impact on the lives of these kids.
Yes.
And that Shoresy goes from someone who is truly lost, without hockey. Shoresy has now He cannot play anymore. He's had too many concussions. It's done for him. And the struggle of Shoresy over this season to find his place, both as a person and in a relationship with Laura or to the team or to the players, he is just he's nowhere throughout the season. And Kiso is incredible at doing this.
He's awesome. And they just basically open up this season and you're like, in any other show, you would imagine that getting this kid Jack to do karaoke for a girl he's really into. Well,
that was the most surprising thing to me is the introduction of these kids weren't just an opportunity for Shoresy and the other adults to kind of roast them or whatever. The latter half of the season, and the season we should say is 6 episodes long, each episode's a half an hour. So you can get through it quickly and it rewards that. It's a very compelling singular storyline. And what's interesting is starting halfway through, it becomes a coming of age story.
Yes.
Like a beautiful coming of age story. These are the moments that I cried.
It's fucking so moving.
When the adults decide to forego their own pleasures, their own getting into the weird Sudbury orgy sex party, but then foregoing that in order to go and help their young charge do a choreographed dance so he can get the girl.
Yeah.
Like it all felt like a, John Hughesy rom-commy coming of age story, but the people that are actually coming of age are not the kids. It is the adults.
Yeah.
And that is, what a trick that is.
Yeah. I mean, I could see a different show doing the kids in one episode where it's like today the hockey players are mentors. And then the next episode they do this. And it's instead they're like, no, you're going to get introduced to these guys. This is a show with a pretty caustic relationship to children, I would say.
Oh, aggressively. Jory Jordan.
And everybody else, like Corey and all the kids that Shoresy's always talking about their mothers.
Oh, yeah.
And the mothers do come up a lot in this season. But it's basically like they stretch this relationship out over 6 episodes. And you're right. I would recommend you watch as much of this in one sitting as you can, because what I don't think I got the first time through Shoresy was the amount of jokes that just get echoed through episodes and the amount of callbacks. And if you're watching it in this sort of marathon, you will find it a lot more funny and resonant because
it functions the way that you and your friends function. Yeah. It's like Letterkenny, Shoresy is a hangout show. A lot of the action takes place when the guys are at the bar, sitting at home. It's in the locker room. It's a shaggy kind of hangout show. Letterkenny really it does that, indulges in that. But just like Letterkenny, Shoresy is interested in everybody doing callbacks to jokes that they've already done with each other. And as we're watching now, there might be a callback 3 episodes later just because it works for the moment. And that's what these guys would do.
There's an incredible example of this where if you're watching the show, and obviously Jason and I are talking about details of season 4. I hope you watch it. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. But there is a moment early on in this, I think it's in the first episode of this season, where a bunch of the players are partying on a lake. They're tubing. Tubing's incredible. And they leave the gyms on a dock.
Yeah.
Because the boat's full with broads, with 10s. And you're like, oh, that's a funny visual gag of the gym standing there.
So, just for people in case you are wondering, it's basically the team, a bunch of guys on the team have taken a bunch of hot girls out on the boat and left 3 of their teammates behind.
Yes.
All of whom are named Jim.
Yes.
Jim, and Jim.
Yes.
And this is a slight that goes
The 3 indigenous guys who basically won them the championship and are the big fighters on the team. They're basically the security guys for the rest of the players.
And they are absolutely hilarious. They function in the show because the show, for the most part, everybody is crackling dialogue, fast talking, just tons of stuff. And the gyms are laconic and laid back, men of few words. They just really answer usually with 1-word answers or brief answers.
And it's always the same 2-level joke. It's like the first 2 gyms, they'll ask the gyms a question and the first 2 gyms are like, yes. And the second gym's like, yes. And then the third gym says the most emotionally intelligent thing in the flattest way possible. And I could watch it happen 7,000 times an hour. I don't care how many times they hit that joke.
They are very good at creating character games that, for me, do not wear out their welcome. Mostly because they're not clobbering it over and over and over. They also have a rich enough bench of characters that you're just not being hit with the same jokes. But for the Jims, when they do pop up to participate in this same game, is so funny and so rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's just you feel as though there's nobody being like, hey, we got to dig into the Jims.
No.
We got to get Jim's backstory. No, we don't. All we need to know is their feelings were hurt that they were ditched
And they tattled.
And then and then many episodes later, they get their retribution.
Yeah.
And what then happens, which is so funny, is they make you wait for that, and then the Jims tattle, and then they do this thing called kangaroo court, where the hockey team in the locker room becomes a courtroom, and Michaels, the goalie, is the judge, and a whole episode is just...
I think it's like an episode and a half.
It is. It's just them litigating what happened, why the Jims told on the rest of the team, and then the reveal that their feelings are hurt because they were ditched at the docks, and everybody has to, that lands with everybody because they didn't even realize they'd done it.
Right. And, and then the Jims wind up hooking up with these guys' ex-girlfriends who they cheated on with the chicks.
Right.
With the moms of the team that they're coaching now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the through lines of Shoresy is that Sudbury is full of the most beautiful women who only want to fuck hockey players.
Tens everywhere.
Nonstop tens everywhere, just chasing the hockey players. And the hockey players are always talking about this, but then whenever they are out in the world, it is borne out.
Yeah.
They are always being approached by women, and it's very funny. But the fact that the dynamic between these episodes is a romantic triangle of just bad behavior on everybody's part, and that it all gets litigated in the locker room, fantastic.
It's also, there are two central relationships, which is basically Shoresy and this woman, Laura, who is a sports journalist, who is essentially got Shoresy in a kind of probationary period to prove that he's serious about a relationship. I think because she has a son. I can't.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
She has a kid. She is, while the rest of the guys are out chasing young women, that's how it's, most of the women who are in and out of the hockey player house are 20-somethings, let's say. And then the guys are they're also fucking the moms of the hockey players they are coaching. Shoresy is going after Laura, who is I think a peer of Shoresy's,
Yeah.
And she has a son, and she demands to be taken seriously.
So she's like, you got to go figure yourself out this summer and figure out whether you're ready for what we are.
Yeah.
And so there's that really sweet thing in the middle of the relationship Shoresy has with Laura and the relationship he has with Nat are these incredibly emotionally rewarding pairings, while around them, everybody is getting tug jobs and, having sex with people's moms. So you get the sugar and the spice.
Well, there's also the show is also shot through with very long music sequences, music montages. Letterkenny did this expertly as well. And when the show is in season, it's also hockey.
Yes.
It's also the sports footage. But off season, it's instead them partying or them dancing. In Letterkenny, there are great ones that are 4-minute choreographed brawls because Kiso's character in Letterkenny is the strongest guy in Letterkenny. So everybody's constantly trying to fight him. So the fight sequences are relentless and so funny, but so hardcore. And I love that they are punctuating a lot of this is, again, a 24-minute episode with a 4-minute, music montage.
If you ever see a Shoresy that's a 33-minute runtime, it's because there's a 7-minute montage.
Absolutely.
Of tubing, hockey practice, and night clubbing.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And I never am oh, this is going on too long. I'm no, I love this. And what's great about specifically the Shoresy Laura romance is it infects the younger Jack's journey to finding love with the woman he's interested in, because Shoresy is constantly in pursuit of Laura, trying to prove to her that he is up to this, that he is, and he's relentless about it. He's when he's singing her karaoke, it's great. When at the one of the times that I cried in this season was in that last episode when Jack is reading the letter to Laura as Shoresy enters, and it's heartbreaking. It's beautiful, and it's a terrific arc that he's on that you are invested in. The fact that I'm invested in Shoresy finding love with the single mom in Sudbury, the fact that I care and am so absorbed in that for a show that is mostly about, are they going to win?
Yeah.
Are they going to win the championship?
Yeah.
You know, the fact that they can also just kill it on a storyline that is so small stakes and emotional based. It's great.
The whole thing with Nat and Shoresy. So Nat was like basically this cornerstone figure for the first 3 seasons. She remained so this year, but like I think the way that they were able to slowly pull Shoresy back towards the Bulldogs via Nat, who Nat has some of the same problems Shoresy does, which is that she only really thinks about life through the prism of this hockey club and whether or not this hockey club is successful and winning, and because they hate losing, all this stuff. Zieg and Meeg finally talk Nat into like chilling out a little bit, which is a great subplot in and of itself. But Nat and Shoresy wind up having this amazing conversation midway through the season or towards the end of the season, where she's just like, look, I love my mom. She was my best friend when my mom passed away. I needed a place to put my love, and I put it into the club. And she's like, you
Find
need to
a place to put your love.
And I was just like, come fuck on, man. Like, you shouldn't be able to have like the best comedy on TV and then also have like a part like this.
Not only, and I just got like goosebumps again when you said it. When she says it, it's so perfect. And it's also in a conversation. Again, Nat is the owner, operator of a local hockey team.
Yeah.
Shoresy is a middle-aged, like also ran, now is out of the league. But they both have so much heart, but are both so stoic and kind of unable to show anything. And so when Nat just offers that up, you need to find a place, and that she's talking about it in the context of finding a therapist. My shrink told me I needed to find a place to put my love. And that Shoresy interrogates both, you have a therapist?
Yeah.
And he's basically, because I think of you as the tallest building in town, but I think of you as solid.
Yeah.
You know, and that there is a pro-mental health message in here, and that then Shoresy comes back later, and this is another time that I cried, and he says, I want to put it here. I want to put my love. You told me to find a place to put my love. I want to put it here.
Yeah, as a coach of the Bulldogs.
As in, I'm going to coach the team.
Yeah.
And boy, like that just lands. You know, they are setting up beautiful emotional beats that then they pay off in a very simple way. It's a transactional, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
But boy, it works like gangbusters.
Yeah. A couple of my other favorite moments of the season. The guys being presented with the Blueberry Buddies shirts.
Incredible.
A 5-minute joke about all the other fruits that they could be and all the other cooler names, the Blueberry Buddies, which is the name of the mentorship program. And while 3 men are making like, we could be the Pomegranate Pals, we could be this, we could be that, Bulldog Bros, Hitch just keeps being like, I didn't know golf shirts came in long sleeves, and just keeps saying it. And like, that's one of the things that's so great about this is you can rewatch this show and realize there is a second or third joke happening underneath 3 other jokes.
The show is very joke dense, and that is very rewarding to rewatch, I will say, because you sometimes, because there are, this season maybe a little bit less, but there are often even more characters. Like because it's a hockey team, because there's youth hockey as a part of it, because there's a lot of moving parts. So it's very easy to be like, oh, I didn't even know Dolo's game for a while, because a lot of times he's subtitled and I've missed it, or Hitch or whatever. And you find like, oh, there are sub games going on here. There are little like you were saying earlier, little callbacks they're just it's loose and they're having fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of it feels like if you miss it, that's fine. Like, that's okay.
Yes.
Like, the show doesn't need you to get every joke to succeed.
Another amazing, just one-off footnote is during Kangaroo Court, and then it kind of bleeds into something else. Shoresy is talking about Brian McKnight.
Yeah.
And Dolo breaks the French thing and just starts going, did you say Brian McKnight?
So good.
He's like, yeah, I'm not talking about Genuine.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're hilarious, bro. Like,
it's so funny. Those are the bits, because it does feel like conversational bits are happening between friends. And that is, Letterkenny had that too. That is a delight. And that you get you get the hockey players and how they riff and kind of roast each other. There's a lot of ball busting. There's a lot of, what's interesting is it's a show that is that appears to be telling a story about these hockey players and about this league and blah, blah, blah. But it's really about helping these hockey players understand that they have emotions and now also how to take care of those emotions. You know, how to exhibit them, how to they are. It is. I mean,
it's
when I
one
say
of the most humanist, affirmative things you can watch. It is definitely very therapeutic. I actually got a really wonderful email from a listener named Andre Cormier who wrote a very long thing. A lot of it is about Canadian identity and popular culture and Kids in the Hall and SCTV and a bunch of other stuff. But I'll just read the second half here just because I think it touches on some of the stuff that we're talking about. Shoresy is different from different. The show is so filled with heart that it breaks me to think about how goddamn reflected it is of a sort of Canadianness I thought was gone forever. We can only hope that our country never take itself too seriously, except when we're figuring out where to put our love. And the whole display is effortless. The show interlocks harmonious diversity without attention-seeking. It manifests self-deprecation without the burden of colonial trauma. It celebrates tired nation-building mythologies and yet has all sorts of time for exposing the hypocrisy of their exclusivity.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, this is also a fucking funny show, but that's right.
And yes, that's absolutely right. And that is present in every scene of every episode, but also it's dead dumb funny.
Yes.
It's also interested in absolute silliness. And boy, isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
You know, what an incredible show that appears to be just a nonstop blast. But boy, like I said, I cried a bunch. It has so much heart.
I also love that Weird Sudbury's built up the entire season and we don't see it.
I love it. I love that we don't even go. We get the warm up party, and that's all. We're not weird enough.
Party.
They know we're not weird enough to see Weird Sudbury.
I gotta say though, one of my favorite bits this year and one of the most heartwarming ones is the Michaels stuff. So Michaels is the goaltender. He was the former coach who gets fired and then becomes the goaltender of the club, and then. Basically, the running bit through 3.5 seasons of the show is that every time Michaels talks, Shoresy says, "Shut the fuck up, Michaels."
Everybody just dumps on Michaels.
I'm just I wish I didn't work with you, so I never had to hear you talk. So two very funny things happen. One is that of the mentees that they're shepherding through this process, there is another kid goalkeeper who in turn Michaels is like, "Caleb, shut the fuck up," every time he talks.
Also, they give Caleb such good stuff. Caleb himself is so funny. They do a thing, you mentioned it earlier, where they do a thing constantly, which is they will repeat dialogue with subtle, slight changes. And the one where they're trying to get all the kids to say their bit.
A masterpiece.
Crying, laughing.
Yeah.
I was laughing to a point where I had to stop and catch. I got scared that I wasn't able to breathe.
Don't say your age. It's not a fucking dating profile.
And then Connor says his age. And then the next guy starts and he says.
But Caleb's always just like, "I'm Caleb. I got to work on my game and myself." All the Michael stuff, also Michael's being left out and Shoresy being like, "I can't leave this guy out."
Because his ex-girlfriend runs or is the connection for Weird Sudbury.
And then, all the, I think that the Hitch karaoke training scene is among the best things I've ever seen in my life.
Incredible.
Him talking through it, but then singing. And then the gang vocals on it are just...
And then them going with Jack to the place and Jack singing, and the way there is just such a palpable sense of emotion and camaraderie without having to say it on, say it with dialogue.
Do I have to get into Canadian pop country now? Is Sheriff...
By the way, they are also it's just all Canadian music throughout the whole show. Have not heard Sloan yet, but I'm sure they're in there.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to Rogue Heroes and Thousand Blows, any other Shoresy stuff?
I wrote a lot of that stuff too. Find a place to put your love is what a beautiful idea. Yeah. What a beautiful sentiment. I'm just looking through I wrote notes just because I write notes. I'm watching both Shoresy and Reacher right now. And somehow, boy, do I want a Shoresy Reacher crossover because they're...
Reacher got good again, apparently, right?
Oh, Reacher, I'm so sorry. Has Reacher been bad?
Well, I saw Richson talking about how he was like, we let the fans down with the fight choreography.
He felt like the action in season 2 wasn't up to snuff.
What do you think?
I don't remember a
Okay.
lot of the action set pieces, so maybe it's unmemorable.
Yeah.
But I don't remember watching it being like, this is bad. And in fact, bits that I loved when he like kicks the car and the airbag goes off, and there's things like that in there that I think are like iconic to the show.
We'll have to do some kind of reach around at some point. But
Season 3 of Reacher is pretty fucking great.
we can move on to the Stephen Knight verse now.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay, so Stephen Knight is a very prolific,
UK Taylor Sheridan.
incredibly accomplished screenwriter, basically the UK Taylor Sheridan. He's probably best known for Peaky Blinders. He has done a bunch of stuff with Tom Hardy. He has done so much feature film screenwriting.
Was he on Taboo Island?
He wrote Taboo.
He was Taboo?
Yeah,
Okay.
so Chips Hardy
I was
and
gonna say-
Tom Hardy brought Taboo to him.
Oh, I thought Chips wrote it.
No, it was an idea and a character base
Got it.
that Chips
Okay.
thought of. And he also did the Dickens adaptation that I liked that came out last year, Great Expectations, I think.
Yep, he did Maria this past year. He did This Town.
Yeah, which has not come out in the States
has
yet.
not come out.
And
I've been trying to find it
I
and
know.
get it. Very hard to get. But he is wildly prolific.
Yes. Yeah. All the seasons of Peaky Blinders, and now is doing the Peaky Blinders movie currently. I think he has his own, not unlike Taylor Sheridan, his own sound stages now in Birmingham, where he's from in England. So he is basically creating this like industry around the stuff he does. Rogue Heroes, I guess we'll talk about first.
Great.
Fucking love season 1 of Rogue Heroes so much.
So good.
One of my 10 best shows of the year. So excited that it was coming back. This season is also awesome.
I agree completely, full stop. I'm having a blast.
With the caveat that one of the great things about the first season is this dynamic between Jack O'Connell, who plays a character named Paddy, who is this hot-headed, ultra-violent, tortured Irish soldier in the British SAS, and then Connor Swindells, who is this almost con-manish gentleman,
Yes.
ambitious, like
Clever, like almost like a mischief maker,
hustler, yeah.
trickster kind of character.
And their kind of sensibility, their clash, but also their friendship is this enormous part of why season 1 is so good.
And they are kind of the de facto leaders of this rogues gallery of absolutely chaotic soldiers.
And like you may remember in the first season, there were some other, it caught a bunch of upcoming actors like Tom Glencarney, who's now on House of the Dragon, is incinerated on House of the Dragon. But this just does a really good job of putting together an ensemble. First season is set during the North Africa campaign, and follows the formation of the British SAS. And now the second season, one of my favorite World War II campaigns is the effort to retake Italy.
What are your favorite World War II campaigns? Let's run them
I'm not
down.
really a
Let's
Pacific theater guy.
Because people are like, who's your top 5 rapper? Who's your top 5? What? But I would love to know, CR, what are your top 5?
Okay, so I can actually answer this sincerely.
I love this.
This is only in terms of not like what they actually accomplish, but what I like to watch stuff and read stuff about.
Sure, how you like it, what you enjoy.
The French Resistance, number 1 draft pick. Easily people working like odd jobs in Paris, but also at night having like secret radio stations. It's my shit. Alan First wrote like 10 books about that.
Well, you're a sucker for anything with a secret radio station.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, you've got your pump up the volume tattoo.
I think I really love a bit of desert foxing. I love the North Africa stuff.
I loved all that stuff
Yeah.
in season 1.
And Italy is just like, the cool thing about Italy, they shot this second season in Croatia, but it does a decent job standing in.
I thought it looks great.
And I love all the we got to go up the boot. We got to get, we were trying to outflank these other armies. And it was basically this wedge that they put into Europe so that they could really do D-Day, which is how season 2 sort of culminates with them going off to do D-Day. Did you mind the separation of Swindells and O'Connell?
We talked a little bit about this on text. My presumption is that these are real stories about real people in history, right? This is the formation of the SAS, which is the British not Secret Service, the British
like SEAL team.
Yes, like special forces, like a commando unit. They are a wet work commando unit that are sent in ahead of the troops to just cause as much damage as possible. And so they are beholden to elements that are the history of this thing. So my presumption is Swindell's character just was truly in prison
I
during
saw
this.
that, and I also saw like Swindell's didn't know he was going to be on the show until Stephen Knight was like, "I need you back for a couple of things."
Oh,
so I think
that's
his
interesting
character
too.
is
Okay.
supposed to be captured.
I didn't mind that he was absent from the troops because I just was so into what was going on, and I felt like we got such incredible stuff from Reg.
Yeah.
Without Swindell's there, we were able to get deeper into a lot of the other players, which I was very into.
It's a strange thing because like the show itself goes to great pains to be like, this is certainly not historical.
Yeah.
This is not historically accurate.
Playing AC/DC while they're blowing tanks up with bazookas.
When one guy
is
takes
not,
on 40 Nazis
it's not
while the
accurate.
White Stripes plays, which is just, guess I had that dream on Tuesday, but still, it's basically, it's still a really great show. And it's also really fun to watch O'Connell be put in this position. And he does fucking
He's incredible.
work. And he's like this traumatized soldier who is gay and lost a lover during the first season, and so is just still haunted by that. A lot of the first part of this season is about them invading Italy and doing something. I won't spoil this one part in case you're listening and you're going to give it a shot. They do something on their way into Italy that haunts this whole squad for the rest of the season.
Boy, does it.
Yeah.
And it haunts me. You know, like that's what I think this show's so incredible because a little bit like Shoresy, yes, it's a war show. Yes, it is about active campaigns inside of World War II, but they are doing incredible work showing basically how humanity is being wrung out of these men.
Yeah.
How by the end of this season, they have been cumulatively decimated by what they've seen, done, and lost.
Yes.
And that is evident in all of their performances. And that I think this show, again, like Shoresy, is a very rewarding watch in close proximity. Again, it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah.
This feels like if you are inside of it, this is fantastic character-based storytelling that happens to also have big, huge war set pieces. You know?
I gotta say, man, like I watch a lot of action movies. I watch a lot of contemporary thrillers and action. This show, despite some pretty obvious CGI and not using like real fire and stuff like that, does such a great job. The sort of centerpiece of this season is the taking and then defense of a small town in Italy, where the soldiers basically take back a town from the Nazis and then have to hold off a Nazi attack.
Yeah.
And that's like classic Seven Samurai kind of like setup where it's like the few versus the many. How can we help how can the townspeople help us? How can we set ourselves up? Is there a spy? Is there any high ground that we need to? And you're like,
all of it.
I understand physically like where everything is coming from in this show. And it's like for a TV show, honestly, most TV shows don't fucking bother.
Oh, no, this has like cinematic, not aspirations, but cinematic qualities.
Yeah.
This is beautifully shot, beautifully constructed, gorgeous choreography. I'm never confused.
Yeah.
I'm never like, wait, who are those guys? Who are these guys? Where are we now? Like, how much time has passed? They are really good at walking you through this without it feeling like they're holding your hand through this.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have about like, obviously like this whole, like there's the Jack O'Connell's SAS and then Connor Swindell's character, his brother starts a second group that's more buttoned up and is a commando unit, but is like, we're doing things a little bit more by the
commando
book.
unit with good soldiers, with like the best soldiers. So the SAS, the original SAS was basically made up of
lunatics,
like the cast-offs, the people who were, it's like the Dirty Dozen was turned into
and in
like
the first
a special
season,
forces
it's guys
unit.
who like being stuck in the desert for 40 days.
And guys who are very comfortable with killing, very morally gray, if not worse. So what's interesting is you've got all these interesting kind of crazy characters, but then you introduce now a lethal but very buttoned up version of it under the guise of what's his name?
William, I think.
Bill. Yes.
So it's Sterling's brother. Now you could just say, well, if I was just making this TV show and I had Connor Swindell's, I would have him be the commander of this other unit, right? Like you just to keep these two around, but like obviously there's some adherence to some historical fact. So Connor Swinzell's character is in prison the entire season.
The entire season.
He makes multiple attempts at escape. It's pretty grueling. Like he gives him, he has this concussion, so he's having visions, but essentially is just a POW and not even like a cool, great escape POW.
No, it's not. His arc is pretty static.
Yeah, I'm sitting in a room.
Yes. Which I didn't mind because they, I think in a good way, they only go back to it every once in a while.
Yeah.
You're not like, it's not given equal airtime to the rest of the show, which is at a breakneck pace for the most part. There's a couple of episodes where they stop down for a rest or a meal or a this or a that. But for the most part, they are just like, because they give you dates.
Yeah.
They're constantly giving you dates. And the majority of season 2 takes place in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's basically like their run through Italy, and then the last episode they get to go back
and
to
they're
England
losing
for leave. Yeah.
Dozens of members. They also give you, because it's historical, they're giving you information on screen. There'll be title cards every once in a while that are like, between October 15th and October 17th, 21 members of the SAS died defending the town or whatever. They give you information constantly.
Taramino or whatever the town is.
Which I found very helpful because it helps you understand the stakes for these guys.
Termoli is the town.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. And then I just thought I'd shout out a couple of performances outside of O'Connell, which is mostly down to Theo Barkland-Biggs, who plays Reg.
Yeah. This is an incredible performance.
Yeah. This character is basically a behemoth. Like you'd think, oh, this is like the Jack Reacher of SAS, and his whole job is like kicking ass and taking names. And he has probably the most emotionally identifiable like arc in the season, where he experiences this really dark thing in the beginning of the season and then is just basically pushed beyond any human experience.
Shattered as a human being. He is the character that kind of stands in for what they're all going through, because all of them are going through there are so many events that happen to them in such a brief period of time that are not just traumatic, but devastating.
Yes.
That, and everybody's feeling it to a certain degree, and you get peaks of it through other people. But Reg is really the stand-in for the person who starts in one place in the beginning of the season, and by the end, you are just looking at a hollowed out, a man who is just wanting to die.
Yeah. I mean, the Italian village defense and fight is not on the same level, obviously, but it's very reminiscent of the sort of final battles in Saving Private Ryan.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I really liked the interactions between Reg and Eve Mansour, the Sofia Boutella character, who's a French spy kind of working in conjunction with SAS, but is operating as a journalist. Any other rogue heroes? I mean, it ends very much like awaiting season 3.
Yes, which I'm thrilled. And have they announced? Do you know? Have they announced
I read
that?
something today that was pretty convincing that
Great.
Stephen Knight can basically go to the BBC
He can do whatever
and be
he
like,
wants.
I will be doing.
I hope so, because I can't imagine it's a cheap show. These are expensive actors. The scope and scale of this show is large. This is an expensive show. So I hope they get to keep doing it, because all I want is the next chapter of this. I want to see how this happens next. What was I going to say? We covered most of the stuff, because I really wanted to talk about just Reg. That Reg arc, I think, is unbelievable. But they also, much like we were talking about before, one of the things that I appreciate, sometimes I feel like the adherence to history may be knocking us off what could be better storytelling, or more easier story. Like you pitch, like, oh, what if, our guy, instead of being in prison, was head of SAS too, Wouldn't that be better storytelling? It probably would be, but we're not there. But what that does give us, whereas Swindells is in prison and it's kind of fine, the guy who is captured and then escapes. Tonkin, so that you have like multiple episodes of just a single man behind enemy lines who is just trying to get back to his unit.
Yes.
And that we keep cutting back to that journey, which is much slower, much quieter, not as chaotic, but nonetheless super tense and
interesting
stressful.
too, because it's about like Hitler doing away with the Geneva Conventions of
Yes.
like, if somebody surrenders themselves, you're supposed to put them in a prisoner of war camp, and they're like, if he's a commando, he can be executed.
Yeah, they're basically saying anybody from SAS can be executed, at any time.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the other Stephen Knight show that's on right now. another rock and roll period piece. I would describe when Stephen Knight is cooking, he makes rock and roll period pieces.
100%.
Stuff from across history that he then infuses with this kind of like back room of a pub sensibility with the music blaring.
And it's always music we know. It's always popular music of this era, or not this era. But it's mostly of, I think, his era. So it's The Clash. It's it's stuff that he feels connected to.
I was blown away by 1,000
Yes!
Blows so far.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I've only watched the first one and a little
okay.
bit into the second one because I needed to see how the boxing match in the end of the first one goes.
Holy shit.
This show is hitting all the TV benchmarks you want, where you are introduced and or see a bunch of people that maybe you're vaguely familiar with, but they're now like in starring roles. So number one, I have to talk about Erin Doherty.
Unreal.
She's so good in The Crown, but in this smaller part of Princess Anne. Erin Doherty is essentially the centerpiece of this show, or one of the central characters of the show. And she plays a woman named Mary Carr, who is the queen of the elephants. The elephants are a female gang of pickpockets, con women, petty thieves in East London.
Yeah, this is a show that takes place in like the street level crime of London. So it's pickpockets, it's bare knuckle boxers, it's bar owners. That is the scene.
I was going to ask you if you've ever experienced this, like acting in a scene with somebody, but I've noticed when I was watching her, the blocking or whatever of scenes are nothing out of the ordinary, extraordinary. A lot of this show, like any other show, is two people talking in a room. She does not take a single second off. No plays off for her. She is acting and doing something interesting in every frame of this show.
I did not watch The Crown. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, I looked it up and I have seen her in a few things, but she's in smaller roles and stuff that I've seen, and I didn't clock it as much. So for me, this is like her arrival for me, full stop.
Okay.
And I am like captivated by this.
Yes.
This is a performance that needs to be seen because she is electric to watch. She is so compelling. It's like I'm rewatching Wolf Hall right now because Wolf Hall season 2 comes out next month. And what you're watching on Wolf Hall quite often is Rylance not talking, not having the focus, not being, and she's doing something similar in that she's not always saying the thing, but we're watching her clock everything. We're watching her put it all together. We're cutting to her a lot, not because she has something to say, but to watch her make sense of the surroundings.
Yes.
You're watching her watch, which I love.
So she has, especially in the episodes that I've watched, like moments that are like not uncommon in Stephen Knight shows, not uncommon in any television show. You better do this or I'll fucking kill you, or don't you mess with me because this is who I am. And the dialogue is really good. In fact, I wouldn't put it up on the same level as, but it is giving me Deadwood vibes. The density of the dialogue and it's
the bar that is the setting where the boxing matches take place is so reminiscent of Al Swearengen's place, and there's a lot of Deadwood.
There's even like the Hezekiah's character, who we'll talk about, is like very like Seth Bullock arriving.
Absolutely.
And
this is I also have, this is very Deadwood.
But Doherty's doing like all this facial stuff, or it won't even be like big acting. It'll be like, I'm looking at this guy so you can feel through my eyes that I want to kill this guy. And it's much scarier or more involving than just even the dialogue. But it's almost like I would wonder whether or not the people who are in scenes with her are like, whoa, you're kind of like, you are cooking right now.
Oh, she's, in a show of phenomenal performances. She is just, this show has Stephen Graham in it.
Yeah.
And she is just demolishing all over the place. And what's super interesting is because everybody is inside of this criminal underworld, nothing is to be trusted or believed. We see everything, a lot of the action we see through the eyes of two Jamaican immigrants, so it's an immigrant story as well, who have just arrived in London and are trying to get the lay of the land.
Yeah.
And so we're also watching them we're watching them watch Mary and the elephants do all of their pickpocketing and all of their like, I love that scene in the beginning where one of them is giving birth on the street, and while the rest of them are infiltrating the crowd and just picking their pockets while this fake birth is happening. Just scams, just like really street level scams. I love that it's not big giant heists or something. It is just like scraping by street level stuff.
And it's so awesome. Like the writing puts characters in these incredibly dramatic but very real situations. These two brothers, or the Malachi Kirby plays a guy named Hezekiah Moscow, and then he has, is it his cousin who's with him? Who's Alec?
I think so.
Francis Lovehall plays Alec Monroe. Yeah. I think that's his cousin, and they've come over from Jamaica to London basically because Moscow has had a correspondence with a zoo animal trainer guy, and he's like, this guy has a dream of becoming a lion tamer.
Yep, he's going to come and learn how to be a lion tamer.
And the head of the zoo has been like, when you get here, I'll give you a job. It turns out that job is incredibly racist and demeaning.
Oof.
But these two guys arrive in London and have 5 shillings.
Yeah.
And the show itself, the plot is basically hinges on, what would you do if you only had 2 shillings left?
Yeah.
And what would you do if you only had 1 shilling left?
What are your top 5 shillings?
Kurt Schilling, 2 bob, 3 pence. I actually don't even know what a shilling would translate to now.
Couldn't tell you.
But they run out of shillings pretty fast, and then they have to basically earn money back with their fists. So there's a whole bare knuckle boxing plot. Stephen Graham is sort of the center of that. He plays a character named Sugar Goodson, who is
just terrifying.
One part Jake LaMotta and one part Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas, and is essentially the swear engine of that area. But I want to shout out James Nelson Joyce, who plays his brother
guy?
Treacle.
Incredible.
He's awesome.
Incredible.
He is awesome.
Is he a fighter? I don't know. His fighting stuff was so
No, he was in the British Shameless.
He's
a veteran.
He was such a good fighter just in the fights that I was like, oh, is this his background? Did you watch this? So all of this stuff, the bare knuckle boxing stuff, is fantastic. And similar to Deadwood, it exists in a period where they're like, hey, Mary says to Sugar, she gives him boxing gloves.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, use these. It's like, this is a London that is still a frontier feeling, a lawless frontier. But change is coming. Order is coming. Boxing is being legitimized. It's being put up in hotels where you can make money. It's not in the back of bars, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, again, and like Deadwood, a story about a place that is about to be like civilized, but is now lawless.
And the production design is so good on this show, but at the same time, it's an example of how great writing can do the work of, say, a $10 million to build a set. So in the beginning of the first episode, Alec and Hezekiah are looking for a hotel. They're obviously having a hard time finding one because they're Jamaican and it's a racist city, but a cop tells them, if you walk east until basically you can't see anymore and you can't breathe anymore because it's so polluted and it's so hazy and it's basically like he's like, you might find a hotel you can afford. And when they get out there, they find another amazing character, Mr. Lau, who runs this hotel and is going to be involved, obviously, with the larger plots of the show. And it's just like, I feel like every time you walk into a room in the show, you meet somebody interesting.
It's awesome. It's fantastic. I cannot recommend this show enough. The bare knuckle boxing element of it and a lot of the other kind of frontier-y, kind of chaotic elements of it, lawlessness, remind me a lot of Jonathan Tropper's fantastic show, Warrior.
Warrior. Sorry,
Warrior. Because Warrior has the fights.
And that's in San Francisco, right?
It is.
Okay.
And I love that show. I love Warrior. I think it's fantastic. And there is a similar element to it, which is there is a whole thing going on down here that exists outside of law.
Yeah.
And that the encroachment of government and law and order and all this stuff is like this threat that threatens everything, all the way of life inside of this area of San Francisco, or in this case, this area of London. Incredible. I love this show so much. All I want to do is I want like this to stop and for Rogue Heroes to come back and then that to stop and this to come back. Like I just want to be watching these shows.
Isn't this the best though when you get I in no way was like in a kind of TV slump, but in some ways I almost like Severance and White Lotus are like known qualities.
Yep.
And there's something about having all this new shit and also like
What a surprise.
Yeah.
What a surprise. Because I asked you if you were watching 1,000 Blows. You said you hadn't started it.
Nope.
And then I woke up to a text this morning, all caps. You love it.
Yeah.
And that is
Wife loves it. It's just like, and she was like, we can watch like one a night. I don't want to
Great.
overdo it.
great.
And
It is, isn't it great that even though we're consuming and I feel like nobody consumes more than you do, because you're watching basically everything I'm watching.
Yeah.
Plus more, plus sports,
plus sports.
which I'm never watching.
Well, I don't have to watch that much sports because the Sixers suck this year, so it's okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. That's football?
No, that's basketball. The
Kidding.
Eagles won the Super
Yes.
Bowl, so I'm fine.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but
Congrats.
like it's really cool. The Aaron Doherty part, Malachi Kirby, who I thought was incredible in Small Axe, the Steve
Yep.
McQueen stuff, but to see people kind of like blossom right in front of you is really cool.
Discovery.
Yeah.
It's so fun that even though we're watching all this stuff, there are still shows that arrive that are fucking great. And I didn't know there was a new Stephen Knight show.
Yeah.
I didn't know this show was coming until it was on Hulu. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay, I'll watch this. And then immediately obsessed.
Interesting that the 3 shows we're talking about are all 6 episodes.
That is interesting. Well, they are. I will say one of the things we have liked about all of them is that they are forward-moving singular storylines for the most part. These
Yeah.
are long narratives. It's a movie. It's a
Yeah.
miniseries. These are not formulaic TV. These are not episodic TV. These are narrative, heavily serialized stories that we're digging into. I think if they went much longer, it might get a little wonky.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just
I
loving
think Thousand
these.
Blows has already been renewed.
Thank God.
I know Shoresy is definitely coming back for
Oh,
season
yeah.
5, obviously. And then I'm just fingers crossed we get to see Rogue Heroes.
Oh, like the bummer about Rogue Heroes, the only bummer is that in order to watch it here, you have to subscribe to MGM Plus.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely stupid. This is where streaming is fucking us.
Yes.
It's making it such that shows that deserve an enormous audience literally can't find them because they do not have the subscribers, because who on earth would subscribe to MGM Plus?
I just don't understand why we're in 2025 and there's not just like a BBC America that
Crazy.
is like, here's what's on BBC in
Yep.
England. If you want us to wait for 3 months or whatever it is, that's fine.
We can window all this
but
stuff.
just put it on.
But put it up. Why is it so hard for me to get This Town?
Yeah.
That show has been out for over a year. Anyway, but so that's the hard thing is like some of these shows just become difficult to find, and that makes people not pursue them.
Yeah.
Versus if you could just opt into it, if you could turn this off right
Rogue
now.
Heroes 1 was available on Prime for a while. It was
Really?
it was just Prime.
Okay.
And now it's switched over to this MGM Plus. Like you
Yeah.
have to pay $7.99.
You have
a
to,
month
but
or
you
something like
can't.
that.
What you can do is sign up for a free week, watch it, and cancel it. It's only
Sure.
6 episodes.
Or maybe there's a ton of magic inside of the MGM Plus library.
But that's the bummer because there are. I'm sure there are good things. But I mean, like, those are the shows that to me get lost in the shuffle. SAS Rogue Heroes is one. The Gold was one.
Yep.
You guys were big champions of.
It was. I don't think it's actually on Paramount Plus anymore.
No,
I
it's
think
not.
they took it off. Yeah.
Perpetual Grace Unlimited, Steve Conrad show. It was on Epix.
Yeah.
It was on Epix's streaming service. So it was just truly bizarre to try and figure out, and a phenomenal show.
Yes.
Anyway, I know we're wrapping up. I'm gonna give you a show to watch because it took me a long time to get you into Shoresy, but you're here. Welcome. The water is warm. Here we go. I know you will now. I wouldn't have said this in the past, but you will now watch animated things.
Is this going to be the Scavenger's Reign new show?
Oh, it might be. It's not Scavenger's Reign in the same sense of
okay.
like crazy.
But didn't they do a new show?
No, you know who did a new show? Oh, you might be talking about Common Side Effects.
Okay, yeah.
Which is incredible.
Okay.
That show, absolutely watch.
And that's on
Adult Swim.
Okay.
I think. Boy, I'm almost positive it's
I'll
Adult
look it up
Swim.
while you.
Which means it's Max, maybe? I think Adult Swim dead ends at Max. But regardless, there is a show.
Dead ends at Max. What a world. It is on Max.
Yeah, that's R.I.P. There is a show that I have now watched multiple times all the way through within the year it's been available. It is an animated show called Frieren, Beyond Journey's End.
Okay.
and it's on Crunchyroll. It's an anime. It's an anime show. I watch anime now.
Okay.
I'm a 52-year-old childless man with a Crunchyroll subscription. Watch out. It is incredible. It is absolutely staggering.
Say the name again.
Frieren. Frieren. How? Hold on. I'm not trying to picture it. Frieren.
Yeah, that's you have it. Frieren.
Yes. And then Beyond Journey's End. It's based on a popular manga series. And it's hard to explain what's truly incredible about it because it's one of those shows that what it looks like isn't exactly what it is.
Okay.
It looks like a show that's about like a party of heroes who are fighting, a mage, a warrior, a healer, a priest. The mage has an apprentice, and they see a dragon and they have to fight a dragon or whatever. It's all of the tropes and the archetypes of a fantasy show.
Yeah.
But what it's really about is Frieren is the mage character, and she's an elf, and she is essentially immortal. And what she is dealing with is the consequences of having become, we're watching her and a hero's party on one journey, but we're flashing back to 80 years in the past when she was part of a different hero's party.
Okay.
That was successful in fighting someone called the Demon King.
Gotcha.
And we never see that, but what we do see is Frieren wrestling with her immortality means she has trouble connecting to people and she starts to lose people that are important to her. Yeah. No, it's very similar to Shoresy because it's about people who are learning how to care about other people. They're learning how to have emotional connections, how to exhibit emotional connections. It is an incredible show.
You're in my cool book. If you recommend me a bunch of people
Let's do it.
like watching the phone book, I'll watch it.
I think it's exceptional storytelling and it's beautifully done. Frieren.
All right, we have our recommendation from Jason. You were such a prince for coming in and talking to me about these shows.
Nothing made me happier than your text saying, "Where are we?"
I like the idea that Richard Price is just like quietly waiting in the lobby, waiting for you to finish, but he's not. We already recorded that. I hope people stick around for my interview with Richard Price.
Oh, please do.
It was a real treat for me. And if you are looking for a Richard Price novel to read, you can start with Lazarus Man, which is his most recent book, or Lush Life, which is my favorite one.
Incredible book.
Clockers is also awesome. Jason, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Chris.
My guest today is one of my favorite writers, full stop. Richard Price is the author of 10 novels, including The Breaks, Clockers, Freedom Land, and one of my favorite books ever, Lush Life. He is also an accomplished screenwriter, and his credits include The Color of Money and Sea of Love on the big screen, and The Wire, The Night of, and The Deuce on TV. His latest novel, Lazarus Man, was released last November, and it's about a building collapse in Harlem in 2008, and it is fantastic, and I'm honored to have him on The Watch. Richard Price, thank you so much for joining us on The Watch. I'm such a massive fan of your work. I had asked, if you might be out in Los Angeles anytime soon so that we could do this interview in person, and said I wasn't sure whether or not you made it out here very often.
Not hardly ever. Unless it's related to something I'm doing, like a TV show or, getting Nobel Prize or something. No. I used to go out a lot, but.
Yeah, did you used to come out here so when you were doing that sort of break between the breaks and clockers and you were doing a lot of screenwriting out here? Were you
Yeah. And beyond that, because whatever movies I was doing or whatever TV shows I was doing, whether they happened or not, but the internet just eliminated the need for all that.
Yeah, well, it's the sunshine. The internet can't quite do the sunshine, but it's definitely, the traffic is better on the internet. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that early part of your career, or the earlier part of your career, where you write 4 novels. I think that you've talked about them being very self-referential and essentially autobiographical, and then you take this break for Hollywood and come back to Clockers years later, 8 years later, I believe it was. And
yeah, pretty much.
But since then, it seems like you've been able, the transmission is different, where you're able to switch back and forth between doing some screenwriting work, going back to a novel, some screenwriting work. Was there something is that just age? Is that just familiarity and reps? Or what was it that changed that made you feel like you could go back and forth a little bit easier?
Well, I just could, because the reason why I could do novels is because I was making money from screenplays, and for novelists, the most valuable thing you can buy is time. If you got to buy eggs, you're in trouble if you're just writing novels. But I had a facility for both. When they asked me to start writing screenplays, they did it because they had read my earlier books and they liked my dialogue. But dialogue, I've often said this, has nothing to do with how good a screenwriter you are. I mean, the actors will give you good dialogue. I mean, screenwriting is about, you got 2 hours. You got 4 characters. Race to the top of the pyramid. It's architecture. And it also helps if some gorilla's involved.
Yeah.
And then you could write alphabet soup. It doesn't make a difference, Not really, but.
But Paul Newman helps, right?
Yeah. But Martin Scorsese helped too.
Yeah.
More so, or just differently. The most elaborate calling card you can have is a well-received screenplay. It has babies,
Yeah.
And then you're on your way. When you make enough money and you feel like you found something that you don't want to give to others to manipulate, that's a novel.
So that's what Clockers was at the moment.
Yeah, it all came out of research for Sea of Love, which was a Pacino cop movie.
Yeah,
because they did ride-alongs with detectives in Jersey City. And they went to a housing. I grew up in a housing project in the Bronx in the 50s and 60s. But it was basically a working class environment. But now it's like late 80s, crack time, and the bricks were the same. Everything else was like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah,
because crack was everybody looked so dangerous or lost. And the whole place smacked of doom. And because I had my own drug habit, but it was, like middle-class drugs, sniffing, they used to say Coke is God's way of telling you you're making too much money. But, that just powder Coke. And now here comes this thing crack. And it's a juxtaposition of my own drug history and a housing project environment. And, I just wanted to, what happened here?
Yeah.
And it scared the crap out of me. But at the same time, it drove me forward, like a bird and a snake. Sometimes the bird eats the snake.
Yeah. I remember very vividly being in, I think, early high school, when I think Clockers was adapted, or at least being talked about adapted, relatively soon after it was released. Am I right about that?
Well, the movie came out in 90, I don't know when the movie, 95, I guess.
Yeah, but
I can't remember. But 92, the book was published.
So right after the book, I was not a voracious reader. I read a little bit, but I was a big movie fan, and I was really into the sort of then exploding independent film scene then. I remember reading an interview with a director that I liked a lot named Nick Gomez, who had directed.
Oh, I know Nick.
Yeah,
I know Nick.
And he had directed.
He was great. Jersey Drive.
Yeah.
But what was the other movie?
Laws of Gravity was the first movie he did.
Laws of Gravity. Both those movies knocked me out. He primarily does TV directing right now.
He did some Homicide episodes, but he had done an interview around Laws of Gravity, and they were asking about what he was going to do next and what is he hoping to do. And I think the interviewer said, well, what about something like Clockers? And he was like, well, Clockers, it's Richard Price. I mean, that's huge. And I'd never heard your name. And I all of a sudden, just voraciously sort of jumped into the bibliography up to them. But it's interesting how
wow, thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. But the film, that probably changed my life in some way. But even then, even in the 90s before the internet, the way that the film career could inform the novels and the novels could inform the film career, I'm sure you felt that yourself.
Yeah, I just, things come out of things. So I learned things writing screenplays, and I learned things, each sort of informed the other. On the other hand, the best screenwriter in the world would make the world's worst novelist because there's no prose. There's no narrative. There's no consciousness. It's all 2D. And by a reverse, the world's best novelist will make the lousiest screenwriter because he's too wordy, he's too windy. Things don't move. You have all the time in the world to have a conversation in a book. You could sit there eating a sandwich in a book, 15 minutes, 15 pages, as long as the talk is good. And you try that in a movie, it's like, it's like, okay, well, I wrote this scene, and it goes on for 2 pages of talking. What's the director going to do? Aim the camera, push play, go out and have a sandwich. There's nothing. There's no movement.
Yeah.
You don't need movement in a novel like you do in film. You don't need, one is kinetic, the other is static. It's on a page.
Talk to me a little bit about writing for TV, though. So obviously, had you done stuff before season 3 of The Wire? I know you had the NYC 22 show. Was that pre or post The Wire season 3?
That was afterwards.
That was after. Okay.
The less said about that, the better. It was awful because it was a network. It's a network wants what the mainstream wants. The mainstream does not like anything that's different. It's got to be something that reminds them of something that reminds them of something before that.
Right.
If you want to do something different, you have to do independent film, I guess. I mean, the budget has to be small, the expectations have to be low, but you're free to do what you want to do. The minute, as the cost goes up, the whoever's in charge of making money, it just clomps down on anything that smacks of like, well, people don't know about this. Well, let's try it. I can't afford to try it. Do you know how much money's involved there?
But I was curious whether or not there were any moments in that Wire writers' room or in the times that experiences that you've had making long form television where you felt like you did have that creative freedom. Because if film is thought of as a director's medium and is perhaps more of an actor's medium, TV is at least advertised as a writer's medium.
Maybe the writer creator, like whoever names are terrible. Whoever's in charge of the Law and Order endless franchises.
Sure. Dick Wolf, yeah.
Yeah. Or, somebody who had, the more you have under your belt, the more control you have going forward. Ironically, The Wire had zero control in a way.
Sure.
I mean, it's a whole room of people, but you've got such a cast of characters. And so everything somebody does has to resonate forward X number of episodes. And you have to lock down every episode to the point of, well, we need this, this, and this to happen, this, and this to happen, and this to happen. So when you leave a meeting for one of the episodes of The Wire that you're supposed to write, you've got this handful of multicolored index cards coded for each character. And now I got to do a scene where Omar's on the phone. Who's he doing? And Omar's talking to this guy because whoever's doing the next episode past me, everything has to dovetail. I mean, you can't go off. I have a better idea. What if I kill Omar?
Yeah.
Or what if we find out that McNulty's gay? You say, wait a minute. This is an assembly line.
Right.
The only wiggle room I had was in humor, but every episode was written in a telephone booth. Huh. That's about as much wingspan as you ever have.
So do you have a preference to what size room you're writing in then? If it's a telephone booth and is the novel then a wide open landscape, do you feel like you can do either? Do you like having the experience of moving?
I don't know if listen, my favorite thing is to write episodic TV based on material that I didn't write.
Okay.
Because I can see, this woman more or less laid it out for me. Yeah, I'll take it, but sometimes freedom is a noose. I like to know exactly where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go to town on where I'm going. I'll make the best of it. If I have to create an original thing for TV, if I have to create a really original thing, I'll write a novel. Yeah. But I'd rather, if I'm writing something that's been adapted, like The Night of, it was called Criminal Justice on BBC. Mm-hmm. then it's like, okay, I got it. I know where the story's going. Now I'm going to Americanize it. The funny thing is, I watched Criminal Justice. It was 6 episodes, great acting, and I really enjoyed it. But now all of a sudden you say, okay, well, we're going to adapt this now. Then you watch it more carefully, and you go, that makes no sense. What the hell? What? Everything looks like crap to you.
Yeah.
Because what do I do with that? I mean, what? So you wind up having to invent, which is fine as long as I have that backbone of progression of story, but that somebody else suggested. I'm good, but if it's original, I want to do TV.
When you're doing novels, do you work from a really strict structure? Do you know where it's going to end? Are you basically answering to your own adaptation in some ways?
Well, I give myself an elevator pitch.
Okay.
Basically, because so much of it, you can outline this thing to death. The minute that you start writing, everything changes. The minute you go, it was a dark and stormy night in your own handwriting, and you look down at it, it's all bets are off. Because outlining is not writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Lamaze class. That's not giving birth. So it helps to be organized, but you got to leave a lot of room for inspiration, or you got to leave a lot of room for how you feel after you've committed a character to a place, and start being inside the character, and then realize, well, point 812 doesn't make any sense now, because character X, listen, why is this guy eating ham? I learned that partially. I learned that from avoiding actors when I was writing movies, because actors will have ideas after the horse has left the gate.
Sure.
And what if, is there a world in which blah, blah? But then at one point, I remember writing Ransom, Mel Gibson, Gary Sinise. And Gary kept haunting the production office. Every time he saw me, he slowed down, and I was trying to hide under the table because he's going to come in. But at some point, I realized what he's saying actually makes sense, because he is the character. He's been walking around in that character's brain and clothing, and he would have just as a valuable a take on what that character would and wouldn't do as myself, and I still want to avoid actors.
Yeah.
But, I have respect for the fact that, I think my character is going to do this. Okay, let's start writing. Oh, no, he's never going to do that. It's like,
yeah.
The writing tells you what you don't know, because the writing, nothing happens until you write.
Were you attracted to being on set just as a spectator? And did you find the process of making this stuff very interesting, or were you... I
hated being on set. It's the most boring thing in the world. The reason why on the set, they're constantly passing around like food treats.
Yeah.
Like a platter of tortillas will come out, or all of a sudden there's like, dipped Monte Cristo sandwiches are coming around, or, little custards. And the reason why they do that is because they want to allay everybody's boredom.
Yeah.
So you feel like, if I stand here and nobody asks me a question and I go into a semi-coma, I get rewarded in 20 minutes with something else I'd never read.
Yeah.
By the time a movie's done, nobody's clothes fits.
Yeah. I did notice that, and the few times I've been to set, is the abundance of M&Ms is just outrageous.
Oh God.
One of my favorite novel by you, one of my favorite novels is Lush Life. And I was living in New York when that came out. I sometimes, if my memory of New York is foggy at the time, I almost just refer to Lush Life as a kind of biography. I mean, I was not unlike the protagonist at that moment in my life. I was wondering whether or not you had authors that taught you what New York was, authors that articulated what New York meant to you, because obviously it's such a huge character in a lot of your books.
Well, New York, like who's New York? I mean, if they say the five, let's just stick with film directors. Is
Sure.
it Martin Scorsese's New York? Is it Whit Stillman's New York? Is it Spike Lee's New York? Is it
Woody
I don't
Allen,
know.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Greta Gerwig's New York? It's like this. Like New York doesn't exist. New York is a collection of New Yorks.
Yeah.
So nobody needed to tell me about New York. I mean, I lived here all my life. If I don't know it by now, I'm like encased in something. But there are writers that showed me a way to write that was comfortable for me. And I've always talked about this is Lenny Bruce, because his spritzing. I just read transcripts when I was in high school of his routines, and they used ellipses every time he paused, and then he would free associate, and somehow get there, and that was like my kind of like poppy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the other writer, I guess, I always speak of Hubert Selby because Last Exit to Brooklyn, it was basically, you could look at it as kind of like social realism, but it's social realism on speed. It's impressionistic, it's fast, it takes all the, the time-honored social fiction is usually, like an indictment and a demonstration to the court of unfairness in the world. And it can read very solemn, because the subject is solemn, but I didn't want to write like I was writing with a hammer and tongs, and I guess Selby, who he was part of the Village, I don't know if it was the jazz scene per se, but he was in that bebop.
The beat scene kind of down there.
He wrote with bebop.
Yeah.
And, he didn't waste a lot of time. And the stuff was lyrical without, being so poetic. You didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But it was it taught me how to write narrative with a jazz heart. It was lighter. It was like social realism. I wouldn't say it's social realism light, but it's like there was music in the sentences.
Yeah.
And that's me. I want to write like that, sort of.
It certainly is that very much resonates with me. When I read your books, I actually hear them rather, there are some writers that you're reading and you're sort of intellectually processing all the things that are happening. But with your books, I can hear these people talking, and it has a rhythm of its own. With Lush Life and honestly with Lazarus Man, I think one of the things I admire about you is that you acknowledge that New York City is in this constant state of transformation, that for whoever just moved to New York, there's someone there who misses the old New York. But you write very...
I miss the old Harlem. Yeah. I'm a white guy.
But you write very non-judgmentally about that. I think you're very matter of fact about it, but I don't think you geolocate or chronologically locate a time when New York was at its best and since then has fallen.
Every generation has its own nostalgia, and in turn will be a source of nostalgia for somebody. And it's always half bullshit because, you say, when Glenn Miller played songs that made the hit, that whole crap. People will, it was a nickel to buy a hot dog. Yeah, well, your salary was $60 a week, so it better cost a nickel. I mean, they just remember what seemed more innocent.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of dirty around that innocent it's selective amnesia.
I find myself nostalgic for the Barnes and Noble in Union Square. Not Astor Place. The Astor Place Barnes and Noble. That was.
Are you kidding me? I remember when the first Barnes and Noble went up, and I said, well, there goes the neighborhood. Yeah. Because the whole thing, you're supposed to have small independent bookstores, and you didn't think of them as independent bookstores. They were just bookstores. As Barnes and Noble, that put in the word independent, aka fighting for its life.
Yeah. When I was reading Lazarus Man, I felt like I could feel that book in conversation with other works that you've produced. Especially there were parts of Lazarus Man that really reminded me of Freedomland, in terms of the protagonist who has a a huge secret. Obviously, it's much more destructive in Freedom Land than in Lazarus Man. It's more almost transformative, this new identity that this person comes through. But, you know, when you're writing these books, I'm curious how much you're conscious of your own bibliography, of your own past works, and you're like, oh, that's in harmony with this.
You know, it dawned on me, you know, halfway through writing Lazarus Man, where one of the main characters is a Harlem funeral director. You know, a black funeral. Oh my God, The Whites, which I wrote just before, had a black funeral director based in Harlem. But I didn't. I'm not thinking, oh, I better not do Freedom Land or I better not do Clockers again. It's each time, it's like what triggers me.
Yeah.
What do I want to write? And if I wind up writing about a tight place, like a geographical location, you know, you could do 1,000 books about New York or 1,000 books about anywhere, a village without leaving the village, and still bring something to the party. Every book that wasn't there before, because you grow as a writer, so you bring new perspectives, and you can bring a new depth that you perhaps hadn't had, or new insights that life has given you that you hadn't had when you wrote the last book, and it's going to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful place for us to wrap up. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Obviously your work's meant an absolute mountain to me, so it's really an honor to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Take care.